Good afternoon. I'm a native of Birmingham, so it's always interesting to see the great projects that are already happening in the Midlands. And there's a good benchmark of connected autonomous vehicles happening in the Midlands. In fact, my mother is now telling me on Midlands Today she sees those self-connected things driving around, tells us we are going towards that future. So yes, I work for Ordnance Survey. To give you an idea of the future and what we're doing now, so when we capture infrastructure in the country as it stands, we probably capture 20,000 changes a day. If you imagine smart cities and the new infrastructures as you go forward, such as connected autonomous vehicles, you're looking at millions of objects per square kilometre. So we need to look at different ways of how we can capture those things. So we've been involved with a number of connected autonomous vehicle projects. The first was called Atlas, where we tried to model the distribution of mapping tiles to moving vehicles through different connected infrastructures. So we're very much focusing on what that connectivity might look like, and working with the test beds and universities, how can we scale from test small controlled environments to bigger geographies. The second project, which we're currently working on, is called Enabling Connected Autonomous Vehicles, and that's very much about what connected infrastructure would help us roll out into bigger environments, rural environments, and those things. To give you an idea, for those of you who are familiar with how connected autonomous vehicles work, there's three main layers to that mapping. The base layer, which is what I'm talking about in terms of that real world. So I can see a traffic light. There's this sense perception layer of the vehicle which says, I've got cameras and sensors. They're telling me that thing in front of me looks like a traffic light. You're telling me I'm expecting one. That's a traffic light. And then the dynamic layer, which is beyond the line of sight of the vehicle, over the horizon, which is the area that we're most interested in our type of projects. And the reason we're interested in those is that in that dynamic layer, we have to classify change, and there's 4 levels at the moment. Is that change or object more than a month old? Am I an hour old? Am I a minute old? Am I less than a second? And depending on the type of maneuver you're trying to make, you're going to have to make decisions about how you tell those safety messages. So we're trying to build platforms that would allow a safety message like that to be distributed to as number of people as possible. So it has to be collaborative because we need to share data, know-how. When we look at infrastructure for connected autonomous vehicles, if I'm looking for power and fiber for my 5G or 4G connectivity, we have to ask a wider question. Can I also use that for something else? If I'm putting a sensor at the road, can I use that and put more sensors? Will that give me a more return on investment? So by trying to put together those sort of questions with data and evidence, we're trying to extend to the larger geographies. So what we always say is the technologies have to match that geography. So rural, Birmingham, Oxford, they'll all have different needs, and you have to match the right technologies for that. And again, we need data and evidence. The beauty of working on an industrial strategy project is if we can't provide the answers with software or hardware, we can use data and evidence to influence the policy and regulation, which is also obviously group consensus effort. And the third project, which we're also working on, as some of my colleagues have mentioned, is about simulation. So there's a project called OmniCav coming, which is simulating 32 kilometres in Oxford. Our role is to capture that in the most rich 3D possible, and then use that into gaming engines, into the simulated world, so we can have verified safety testing. So hopefully that gives you an idea of where future infrastructure, both digitally and physically, are going, and we welcome questions on the panel.